Hey, you going, guys? It's Mark here, back from Football for the Fans, with the fans come for everything football. I have another interview for you guys coming up in the next half an hour or so. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. It is an interview with Australia's most known voice when it comes to football. It's a commentator, someone I've looked up to for a long time. He gave me 25 minutes of his time, and I'm ever so grateful. So thank you to you if you're watching Mr. Simon Hill, and I hope you guys definitely enjoy this one. I know you will, and I'll see you at the end of the video. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome back to Football for the Fans, where the fans come for everything football. Today, I don't even know how to begin this, besides saying I'd like you to make my inspiration to get into what I do on YouTube feel welcome, and I'm very excited to have Mr. Simon Hill feature today on the channel. I've got a whole bunch of questions to ask him regarding Australian football, regarding him. And regarding his love for the game that we all love, probably not as much as him, but one day I'd love to be able to experience the same things that he has in our wonderful sport. So, Mr. Hill, I'd love to ask you straight up, how are you? How are you going?
I'm okay, Mark. Good to be with you. Yeah, looking forward to having the football back, whenever that might be here in Australia. At least we've got the Premier League and various other competitions to keep us going.
We do indeed. So I'll give our viewers a little bit of a rundown of who you are. You were born in Manchester. You're a Man City fan. It's run through your whole family. You went to your first game at age 6 versus Ipswich, I believe, in '73, and then you were told to support the Citizens, as I've been told, or as I can remember from your other podcast on the football story. You became a commentator here for SBS, I believe, in 2003. And then in 2006, you began what was a 14-year stint at Fox. And, in that time, you've covered World Cups, Asian Cups, A-League Grand Finals, all the like. And now you're, I guess, self-employed. Is that what your LinkedIn says, self-employed? Is that what you'd say you are now?
That's pretty much what I am. Yeah. I'm doing it all for myself. Same as you at the moment.
Yeah, same as me. And you mentioned that you're in a cover band. Want to spend 10 seconds talking about that?
Yeah, look, I played drums all my life. Started playing, I think, when I was about 10 or 11 years old, and was massively into heavy metal music from that age. It was always my ambition to be a rock star. That was probably alongside football my two big passions in life, and still are, really. So, I got involved with a heavy metal cover band here in Sydney about 3-4 years ago, and I love it. We were rehearsing last night, doing all the old Maiden, Sabbath, Judas Priest, Motorhead covers, and we gig occasionally in Sydney. We actually won a Battle of the Bands competition a few weeks ago. So, yeah, it's the other great passion in my life, along with football, really.
Well, congratulations. That's not something you'll find on LinkedIn, but hey, that's something that
you might find it on Twitter.
No, mate, that's true. Exclusive to Twitter and to this one channel. There you go. So on my YouTube channel, what I do is I do a lot of live streams of games. So I will watch games on the computer and then I'll talk over it. And the people that tend to tune in are not only my friends who might be doing something else at the same time, but it tends to be a lot of international subscribers. And what those subscribers do is they also follow me on Instagram, and I talk to them. I say, "Oh, look, what games do you want to talk about?" And the great thing is because I've got a small-ish platform, I can talk to them individually. I can get to know them because I'm not being flooded with so many texts and things like that. So it's great, and a lot of them are really keen to learn more Australian football. Look, it's hard to say, but what would you describe your legacy as at the moment? And do you want to be remembered as anything particular when it comes to the Australian football community?
Well, first of all, I hope I'm not finished yet. So I hope my legacy, if there is one, is to be written in future years. Look, I think the only thing I would hope people said was that I made a bit of a contribution. I'm not a player, I'm not a coach, I'm not chairman of the FFA, I'm not the CEO. I'm just a journalist and a broadcaster, really, and a commentator of games. And I've been very fortunate enough to be, in the seats and behind the microphone for some of Australia's biggest over the last 10, 15 years, for which I'm very grateful. So I hope people would say that I made a contribution, that I was passionate about the game here, which I am, and that I tried to make it a bit better if I could in my own small way. Whether I succeeded or not, I don't know. I guess that's a matter of opinion.
So speaking of the game here, what was it that convinced you about Australian football that it was worth coming here, packing up and coming over here?
Well, look, I'll be brutally honest. It wasn't necessarily the fact that I was going to work in Australian football, because at the time, SBS, when I arrived in 2003, didn't actually have Australian football. They had the Premier League and they had the 6-hour World Game Show, and they had some Socceroo internationals. And really, the job was sold to me on that basis. I didn't know a whole heap about football in Australia. I tried to make it my mission to try and find out at least some information before I arrived. So I read Johnny Warren's book, Sheila's Wogs and Poofters, and Shootout by Ross Solly, which is as relevant today as it was 20 years ago in terms of the politics of the game. But it wasn't really until after I arrived that I started to learn about the game in more detail here. And that's the best way to learn about a sport in a particular country, is actually experiencing it firsthand and soaking it up, the culture, going to watch the games, getting to meet the people, the personalities, the politics, everything else. So I would say those first couple of years were probably a learning curve for me in terms of the game here. Obviously, before I arrived in Australia, I'd already spent well over a decade working in football in the UK, covering the Premier League and European stuff, being at World Cups, European Championships, etc. So I was well versed in football. I've been involved in it all my life, but obviously Australian football is a pretty peculiar beast, and I would say that even 17 years on, I still don't know everything about it. I don't think anybody can do. And the politics of it still baffles me and infuriates me like everybody else. But, we battle on. I think it's still got a great future here. So much potential, but we've got to realise it at some point.
I'm very thankful that you used that word there at the end, potential, because that's something that you mentioned in another one of your interviews. Is you use this word potential. I think you actually said 5 to 10% is all that we've discovered so far. Obviously, particularly the international ones will know that football is not the most popular sport in this country. There's all the oval sports, there's oval ball sports, there's cricket, but certainly football is the most played sport in terms of like the junior, amateur, and like sort of overall. I think it's like 2.16 million. I think it was in 2019. Either way, it's something that I asked Craig Foster the other week when I interviewed him, and he answered it wonderfully. I just want to ask you, because you've used the word particularly, what is the potential of Australian football?
Well, the potential for football in this country is to have, first and foremost, a viable and thriving professional league, both men and women. Now, we've sort of touched the surface of that a little bit at various points during the A-League's history, and to be fair, even going back further in the NSL days. But we've never actually been quite able to convert this mass participation base at grassroots into avid fans of the game at club level here. People will rally behind the national teams, both men's and women's, for big events and big games. But in terms of critical mass of numbers that go and attend and are passionate about their club on a week in, week out basis that we see in the rest of the world, Europe, South America, Africa, parts of Asia, that hasn't quite happened to the same extent yet. As I said, we've had a few glimpses of it when we had 61,000 for the Sydney Derby, 40-odd thousand for the Melbourne Derby, grand finals, big blues. At various points in the A-League's history, it's hinted at the fact that the fans are there, and they are there. But we haven't engaged well enough with the ones that are sort of lukewarm about it, and the ones that are passionate about it, we've actually disenfranchised. And I'm talking in terms of both the old NSL and the current A-League supporters. A few years ago, it's not that long ago, 2016, that 61,000 crowd between the Wanderers and Sydney FC. Incredible. And yet we killed off the active support, which is such a vital component in providing that unique atmosphere that only football can provide. And that's to the shame, really, of the game's leaders, who completely went down the wrong path in trying to appease the mainstream. They reached out and grasped, in my opinion, for this mythical mainstream fan that was a fan of all codes. Now, we know lots of people are fans of all codes, but those active supporters are what makes football different. They gave it that unique flavour. And we killed it, stone dead, in trying to appease people who had no love for the game. And it's going to take a long time to come back from that, because people have walked away from it saying, well, if you don't want us, why should we come and support you? So we've got to get those people back. And I think if we do that, then we start to create the sort of products. And there's lots of other things as well, playing in the right size stadiums on better pitches. And yes, youth development, coach development, all those sorts of things. There's a long wish list. But the basic thing is we've got to get the product right at professional level, get people back watching it again. That's when the money starts to flow, and then you can invest in all the other things that we've talked about. We were nearly there 4 or 5 years ago. We were so close we could reach out and touch it. And unfortunately, yet again, we pressed the self-destruct button. We've got to learn from those mistakes and not repeat them, because we've done it so many times.
Do you? I don't know even. If you had the answer to this, you'd be answering. You wouldn't be talking to me about it. But have the solution? What is the solution? Is it? It can't be as simple as advertising. It can't be like.
No. That's part of it. Better promotion of the A-League games. We've got to create stars out of our players. We've got to connect with our communities. And by communities, I mean the football fans in those communities. We've got to get the atmosphere back in the stadiums. As I mentioned, we've got to play in properly sized venues. And we've got to give football fans a product that they recognise. At the moment, I think that people are somewhat bored of a closed league with the same teams going round and round and round, with a lack of atmosphere inside stadiums, with players who move from club to club every 6 months. They want a product that they recognise. And, we all know that football fans in this country, a lot of them follow the overseas leagues. Now, there's a reason they follow the overseas leagues. Obviously, it's got a lot more money, it's got big stars, but it also has narrative, it has meaning, it has big clubs, it has small clubs, it has battles for the title, battles for the top 4, battles for the top 6, battles against relegation, battles for promotion. It's that cut and thrust of week in, week out football that has meaning. And we don't have enough of that. We have a little bit of it with the finals and the grand final and, coming towards the end of the season. But with salary caps that even things out, everybody says, oh, well, that gives everybody an even chance of winning. Well, it does, but it also doesn't create any stories. Central Coast Mariners beating Melbourne Victory, it's not really a story. Apia Leichhardt defeating Melbourne Victory, that is a story, because that's got the narrative of old soccer, new football, if you want to put it that way. The smaller club in terms of finances, at least, against the rich club. It's a ready-made narrative. That's why the FFA Cup works so well. So we have to create more of those narratives and engage with football fans. Forget the mainstream. They will come along once the product is right, out of curiosity. That's been proven before by those huge crowds that we saw. If we get our football product right and engage the community, we're on our way. But seems to be a task that's been beyond us for quite a few years now.
I was one of those 61,000 at that Sydney derby at the beginning of the 15-16 season. I was to the left of the cove, actually, with my family.
Can I ask you a question, Mark? Do you still go now?
Do I still go now? Well, look, I live out here in the hills, right? So, for example, Cogra is quite a long way away. Sydney's been the club that my family has supported, same as the Sky Blues in your family, I'm sure. Not these ones, the ones from Manchester, of course. But I do go. I love to bring my mates along, and when I do go to the Cove, it is an experience that watching the Bulldogs in the NRL or going to even a Big Bash League game, which is pretty intense. It wipes the floor with them without a doubt. So I still have my membership. My family still has their membership. I will always buy the jerseys.
Mark, there's a bot coming.
Well, really for me, the only but is that I sometimes now I'll sit here and I'll talk over them for this, because one of my genuine passions is to get as many people as I can being interested, because people aren't going to sort of access it. I've spoken to these people. They're not going to access it. They're not going to sort of pay for it. They'll probably illegally stream it, but they're not going to access it. So if someone can talk to them over it and talk with them and interact with them on YouTube, then they will. So that's one of the things I like to do. I think it's important to be honest. So I do that. I still go to around 5 to 10 games a year. All of them will be in the Cove, and the only issue is that public transport from here to there is not as great as I would like it to be, and it is long. However, I love going. I do.
It's interesting because I think your story is probably typical of many, and you're obviously quite a committed supporter, which is great. But a lot of people have sort of dropped away a little bit. Some will still go, as you say, to maybe 5-10 games a season, or the big games. Others have dropped away completely, and that speaks really to the failure of our sport to continue to connect with the people who are passionate about it. So they've found other things to do, and we have to try and sort of correct that in some way. And I know it's difficult. COVID in particular has been a massive problem, but we've got the other codes and the Premier League and La Liga. So there's a lot of competition. I understand that. But we've proven in the past that we can attract those supporters on a regular basis. We've got to get back to that and reignite our football culture, because it was great for a few years. Unfortunately, we've slipped away through various reasons. The main one, of course, as ever, being the politics of the game. And we've spent 3 years fighting a governance war, which has taken the focus away from the A-League and the W League. And it's all been about boardroom politics rather than getting bums on seats or eyeballs watching on television. And, that's a huge frustration and a massive disappointment, because we're almost starting from scratch again.
I've got one more little side question before I hit you with the big final question about the World Cup in several years that we're hosting. Have you actually sat in the stands of an A-League game before and not?
Yeah. Well, certainly, before I started working for Fox, because I was still with SBS the first season of the A-League. So I used to go and watch several games. Sydney FC, obviously the Wanderers weren't around then. I went up to watch the Mariners. I think even went up to Newcastle once to watch a game up there. And I used to watch the old NSL in my early years in Australia from the stands. Northern Spirit, Sydney Olympic, Sydney United, Marconi. So, I'm well used to doing that. And even on occasion now, if I'm not working at a game, I'll go and watch it, because I think it's important to be there and show support for the game. I think a lot of people miss this point. As I mentioned earlier on, there's a long wish list for football in Australia. We've got to have better coaches. We've got to invest more in youth development. We've got to promote the game more. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. We've got to do the other. And they're all very good points. Those things all need to be paid for. Now, one of the main ways to pay for football, certainly at a professional level in this country, is you support it at the gate, or you buy a Fox subscription, or watch the games in some other way. So I think people, they don't quite understand it's the missing link in football in Australia. Even the 11 principles that were outlined last week by James Johnson, it was full of coaches, youth development, players, blah blah blah, clubs, business models. Where was the reference to the fans? They were almost ignored. And yet we have more than enough players, more than enough coaches, more than enough administrators, more than enough clubs. What we don't have is enough fans watching the games. That's the missing link, and everybody ignores it. It baffles me.
Speaking on that then, one thing I've come to watch a lot more is the W League. Like, I watch it particularly with my grandparents who I live with, and it's something that we always do, particularly when the games are on in the afternoon. Now that we have the World Cup coming up in the next couple of years, and I do think that we will be in a good spot in terms of the pandemic, can we use that as a turning point in our country where we again begin to grow football, or should we really be aiming for not in several years when it is? But can we use that to take our game to the next level?
Well, I think it will help, and we're already seeing the fruits of that with, governments promising increased funds for infrastructure, which we sorely lack in this country in terms of pure football. So I think that's a good start. Obviously, the game is going to be front and centre. The women's game in particular, I think that's absolutely fantastic. I watch the W League as well. It's a great competition. Again, we need more eyeballs, not just watching on television, but we need more people in the stands. We're seeing in Europe and America, but particularly Europe at the moment, the women's game is growing exponentially, and the supporter base is growing with it. Now, we've talked for years in this country of, oh, the W League's growing, women's game's growing. The crowds aren't growing. They're not watching it. Same as the A-League. That's what we have to fix. So, again, getting that connection with the community, bringing an identity between player and club. The W League is the same as the A-League. Players flit around from club to club, from season to season. There's no identity around those clubs for fans to latch onto. It's so crucial that we get that right. But yes, the Women's World Cup will help. My only concern is, and I have to be careful what I say here, but this is being used a lot to promote gender equality, and I'm absolutely 100% for that. But I hope people don't forget this is a football competition, so it's about football. It's not about women or men. Okay, it's a women's competition, and I get that a lot of the investment has to go into women's football. I'm all for that, but let's not just say that this is it's about gender equality. It's about football. It's a football competition. It's football that's bringing these dollars and this interest into this country. So football has to be the winner at the end of it. Not women, not men, not girls, not boys. Football, and certainly not rugby league and Aussie rules in terms of the infrastructure that comes out the other end of it. The legacy has to be for our game.
Yes or no? Will we succeed in hosting a great World Cup?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Australia's got no worries on that score. We've got the infrastructure. We've got a good record with COVID, obviously, which will hopefully be done and dusted by then. We've got good stadiums, even though some of them, let's be honest, most of them are not actually football stadiums, which again goes back to my earlier point. But everything will be in place. I have no doubt that the public will come out and support these games in their droves. The test again, and I'm sorry to sound like a scratch record, once they draw the curtains and blow the final whistle, and the W League kicks off maybe, 3 or 4 weeks after that, will all those fans come and watch the W League? That's the acid test for the game of football in this country. Or is it just a big shiny event that we all get involved in, and at the end of it move on to something else? That's what football cannot afford.
Well, I certainly hope that we have your voice to guide us into this next stage of maybe not. I guess you could say rebuilding. I wouldn't like to say starting from.
Definitely rebuilding.
Yeah, it is a rebuilding. That 61,000 is a number that was mind blowing back then. I was still very much in school at that time, and I thought, it can't. I thought, oh, it's going to get better than this. I think there's 82,400 seats in ANZ Stadium. I was hoping that we'd open it all up all the seats and we'd fill it out the next derby.
We should have done.
We should have. It didn't happen that way. It's a shame, but I think we can get there. And as long as we have people like you, we have people like Mr. Foster, and we have the people that I feature on this channel, like my friends who are just involved and willing to talk about it and co-commentate with me and have statistics and the like prepared. I think the more everyone does, I think the closer we'll get.
You're right.
Is there anything you'd like to add? Because I don't want to keep you for too much longer, of course.
Anything I'd like to add? I don't know. Not really. I think I've had a good rant.
No, ranting
on a lot of the issues.
Yeah. I may as well just ask. I reckon. Have you ever sat in the active support of any of the A-League clubs before?
Well, not the active support of the A-League clubs, but as you can tell by my grey hair, I grew up on the terraces in England in the 1980s. So I used to stand on the Kippax back in the day at Main Road, and used to travel away every other week with my club. So don't worry, I'm well used to being involved in active supporters, and they were pretty nasty bunch, some of them. So Yeah, but look, I'd like to. You know, the active fans are great here in Australia. Unfortunately, as I say, they've dwindled, you know, to a number which is really unacceptable and should never have been allowed. But anyway, I'm going over old ground, so I won't hop on about
That's
that.
fine. Would you ever be willing to come to a Sydney one? I think you definitely should.
Absolutely.
I think the Sydney ones. I think Sydney, the Cove would be grateful to have you for sure.
I'll just get accusations then from everywhere else that I'm a Sydney FC fan, which they think anyway, which is not true, by the way.
No, I don't think so. One Sky Blue team, I'm sure, is enough.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Thank you very much for joining us here, Mr. Simon Hill. It has been a pleasure. You've been the second major football icon interview that I've done, and certainly one of, if not the biggest reason as to why I started this channel. So thank you very much for your time. Good luck in future Battle of the Bands. Good luck in future endeavours. I'll be supporting you, as will this small but growing, certainly exponentially, little fan base that we've got going on here. This has been Football for the Fans, where the fans come for everything football, and now they come for Craig Foster and Simon Hill. So thank you again to you guys, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyway, so that was Mr. Simon Hill. You can follow him on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and some other stuff. If there's anything else that I've missed, all there. I very much thank him for his time. If he's still watching, he was awesome. It's great to hear someone's opinion who's usually meant to be so unbiased. If you guys enjoyed that, please leave a like and comment down below. Let me know your feedback on the interview and what he said. And if you've become a bit more interested in Australian football after listening to that, let me know. I'd love to hear it. Follow me on Instagram over here. Right there, yep. And I'll see you guys in the next commentary. Hopefully when Nations League and World Cup qualifying goes right away and stops injuring all our favourite players. Anyway guys, see you later. Thank you.